one thing on the agenda. It's gateway signage. Right now, I think I'll turn it over to our director, JP DeRoger, to start it off, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you, Councillor Snow. Back in September, I believe, of 2019, Council gave direction to staff to look at sort of an overall summary of current gateway signage in the city and develop sort of a bit of a plan forward in preparation for budget of 2020. Staff took it upon ourselves to start writing a full-on gateway signage report that was presented to the Community Services Committee in October. A number of drafts were reviewed with our committee through the months of October and November, sort of a tightening of the information that was presented. As you can appreciate, gateway signage is a sort of a broad discussion topic that can, depending on the community, can kind of be hard to kind of narrow down. We tried to kind of keep it into a place where we could have some good discussion with council at the committee level tonight. We've got a package that was presented to you in hard copy, as well as a presentation here as well for this evening. The research for the project, you know, outside of general internet searches, was also to conduct a lot of phone conversations with municipalities throughout the Atlantic provinces, Western Canada and Ontario, as well as contacting signage firms and architects, both local and non-local, to kind of get a sense of what other communities are doing and so on and so forth. So the first item that we were tasked with doing was a review of existing gateway signage and inventory in our city, which didn't take very long. It's right here. And the Wilmot sign doesn't quite look that good at the moment, so that's an old stock photo. And then as well the provincial signage at Linkletter. So I think the St. Eleanor's one blew over as well, but I don't know. We've entered as well just the discussion point of gateway signage to the downtown core as well, at the corner of Heather Moyes Drive and Water Street. Just I think that should be addressed, and it is a gateway to the downtown BIA, so we've added that in as well for discussion purposes. So the next item was for us to look at, if we were to go on a grander scale from a gateway signage perspective, we'd look at kind of where the proposed locations could and should be. Myself and Mitch did an initial run through of where we thought the locations would be ideal. We received a lot of good feedback from the mayor and other community services committee members. Councillors Snow and Adams as well had some good insight in terms of where the signage should be. So we're going to run through kind of where we're proposing gateway signage could be, and just generally speaking, it's any entranceway into the city would or should at least be identified as a gateway into the city. So the first one is the Red Bridge, just outside of Cool Breeze Farms. You'll notice here there's an arrow indicating kind of the proposed location. Essentially, that location is sort of what we consider a primary welcoming mat to the city. As well, the current signage that's there bodes well for us to obviously enhance it. We identify that the current location in terms of general scope is fine, but we may want to move the signage location slightly north, just because that turning lane off of Blue Shank Road would allow for more visibility if it was moved more north, and to allow more of the oncoming traffic to see it. The second location we've identified is coming in from Travelers Rest, heading in towards Reed's Corner. We've identified a more kind of localized location here, right at the corner of Alan Reed's farm, and specifically because there's a maritime electric easement in this location, and that farmland isn't farmable, so it would be an easier location for us to negotiate some opportunities with the landowner for signage to be placed there. Another location we've identified as well is the all-weather highway heading in from Miscush, just before the traffic circle. That again is maritime electric lands, and we'd have to have discussions with them, but again, something slightly easier for us to negotiate, we would assume. Out by the brook? Okay.
You know, at the end of the runway?
Oh yes, that's right, yep.
So there used to be a Summerside sign there. The boundary is right around there.
It's right around there? Okay.
Yeah. So.
Mitch, you got that? We can certainly look at that as well as an opportunity.
Yeah.
It's probably, better for it to be right at the boundary line as well, and maybe not so close to the circle, so that's a good point, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Another opportunity as well is obviously coming in from Linkletter, which we would suggest, should be identified. It's not a high traffic area, but it is an entranceway into the city, and we should have some form of
There's
identity.
a small Summerside sign there now,
Right.
I think. But
Yeah, there is, and when we get into kind of what we're proposing for options and
Yeah.
tiers, we'll get into kind of where we think sort of more money and dollars and more investment should be made. Sorry, I skipped over. Okay, and then another location we identified was just prior to the new roundabout, heading past Green Diamond on the right-hand side would be another identifiable location entering the city. We also wanted to identify, oh sorry, that's Linkletter again. We kind of, when we get into the downtown BIA, and we need to obviously have some discussions with the downtown boards as well on where signage would be ideal and where they would like to see investment, but just for discussion purposes, we've identified 3 locations, whether it's at the entranceway at Heather Moyes Drive, whether it's further down by Evermore, whether it's sort of in the downtown core right by Scotiabank, or outward more towards the Shipyard Market, somewhere in those vicinities. And again, these are just generally placed here, but we believe that there should be some identifiable downtown BIA entrance features as well. So those are the proposed locations. Any questions on those before we move on to the next option?
That's good.
There's probably not enough signs to make a comment on. There not, have we any vandalism problems with their signage that we have?
Well, there's no gateway signage now, so there's none being vandalized. I would say no more than any other community, in fairness. We do have vandalism that occurs throughout the year, and we are diligent to jump on as quickly as we can and deal with it. It is something to consider, but I don't think it's something that should deter us. I think at the end of the day, we want to keep our city looking vibrant, and we make investments into its beautification, and as long as we're continuously dealing with the vandalism quickly, I don't think that should deter us.
And I think one of the things I should say is talking about vandalism, and we look at our downtown and all the beautification that took place there, and it doesn't seem or appear to me that any of it has been touched. So I'm quite impressed with that.
You just jinxed us, but anyway.
I'm sorry, knock on wood, knock on wood.
Bruce, do you have a question?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so moving on to proposed signage designs. This is kind of the fun part. Everyone has an opinion on what the design should look like, what our branding should be. We tried to remain as impartial as possible, but what we did as a staff is we presented our committee with sort of tiered levels of signage, sort of the grand overhead overarching signs that everyone sees in larger centers, some smaller signs, which we would call tier 2 signs, which you're seeing on your screen right now, and then some smaller signs like we see entering into Linkletter, which we've identified as tier 3 signage. To try and not get hung up and get this scope too large, we wanted to kind of just show what other communities are doing, and try and identify with our committee what committee members thought was a design option to move forward with. So these 4 that you're seeing on the screen were sort of the 4 favorites that our committee had seen throughout the research that we presented to them. And the Medicine Hat one at the top right-hand corner was one that we thought was probably the most stately, the most kind of neutral, and one that we thought maybe would resonate well with the landscape in Summerside. Simple but effective. It certainly is a welcoming piece, but again, is more university/institutional look rather than some of the others that can get a little bit more glamorous. So we ran with the Medicine Hat option based on the committee's direction, and yep, this is the challenge, right? We're going to have a lot of options, but we ran with the Medicine Hat one, and it's not etched in stone. It's just what we really wanted to get out of this exercise with committee was to get some budget numbers that we could throw in to budget this year, so that we can at least have a good discussion about what this is going to cost us to do entrance features. And that doesn't mean it can't change at all. It's just for option purposes.
I think one of the reasons that we sort of were leaning that way too is because the brick was like City Hall. It
That was a tying-in feature that we found.
Yeah, and to your point, the brick was like City Hall. The lamp wasn't, and the lamp portion wasn't our favorite. So we tried to tie in City Hall into the schematic. I'm going to show you the schematic. Now just remember, this is a rendering. It's not to scale, so it will look different obviously in person, but this is kind of the next step to where we took it. So we tied in the City Hall clock tower, and utilize the Welcome to City of Summerside with the same as in Medicine Hat. Now, I'm not here to sell anyone on the design. It's just an option that we as a committee thought was something to consider. We ran with this so that we could get a budget number for the budget process this year.
I don't know if I like that clock, but I do like the brick, and I like that it's low, it would be low maintenance. I like that idea too.
Yep.
You know, but.
Go back to the main, you had that clock, sort of, that design, or a similar design to what that one is, and had the clock basically where that light is or something. You know, you could do something like that.
Mhm.
You mean kind of in where that crest is, that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that it's not sitting on top looking like it's out of place. Anyway.
Yeah, and that could be a little bit as a result of the artist rendering that we
Yeah.
used in this design. And that's, again, this is just a layout. It's not,
Yeah.
it's not detailed. We'd have to get into spending an awful lot of money before anyone even really knows if they like
Right.
it. So we kind of wanted the first step kind of thing. But we're welcome to feedback and ideas and so on and so forth. The structure itself is 1.5 meters high by 3 meters wide. You'll see in the next slide that it will be lit, or our intention is to be lit. And all of them would be on a landscaped berm, so they'd be up out of the ground and with some greenery and shrubbery around them. So when you say maintenance free, there will be some shrubbery and things that will need to be maintained, but nothing, extraordinary in that case. This isn't a good rendering, but there's some options here to be able to add some of our Summerside kind of themes around them as props. So whether it's a windmill, or whether it's a solar farm, or if it's a sport theme, et cetera, you can add props to and around those. And no different than, by the time of year, you can add Christmas decorations and so on and so forth, but that stately look will kind of remain. It will be lit, as I mentioned. Now, it's hard in an artist rendering again, but it will be lit from the top and facing downward, so that during snow loads in the winter months, the lights won't get covered in snow and it'll remain lit all year round. The clock, if we go with the clock tower and the clock itself, the clock can be functional and can be lit as well, if that's something we wanted to look at. Something to mention anyway. These are what's considered tier 3 signage. So this is what we would be looking at for the link letter entrance, or it could be considered at others if we were considering budget. And this is just a small example of what we could consider for Summerside. So if we wanted to kind of limit how much dollars we were spending in some areas, this is a tier 3 option. The next one I'll show you is obviously the Cadillac, which is the overhead, the archway piece, something that we all certainly like, but we have to be budget conscious. We referenced the archway that's at the College of Piping as an option to kind of consider for the downtown. And again, these are just concepts, but we did think that an archway overhang would be nice in the downtown core somewhere. So this is the College of Piping one that you see, and we've contacted Malpec Fine Irons, and we've been working towards something similar to this. So it's, welcome to the historic downtown Summerside. The ability for us to decorate it with Christmas lights from the season, or lighting all year round, or banners on either side depending on what events are coming. And again, it may work well at any of the street corners. We may want to look at maybe someday doing 2. So again, these are just ideas thrown out there. So those are the 3 sort of tiered options that we looked at. We would propose that we would at least move ahead with 4 of the clock tower options at the main entrances to the city. Link letter would be a tier 3 option, which is just a typical sign, but a nice brand, and then 1 of the overarching pieces in the downtown. So then we get into pricing. So the total project to do all of the locations that we've identified is between 107 and 117,000. The archway is 45 to 55,000, and then each of those entry monuments are 15,000 to 16,000 installed, and then just the smaller signage are 2,000. So that's.
You say you needed 4 of those?
Yes, yeah. So
Reed's Corner.
Squish.
Squish.
So there's 2 at Reed's Corner essentially. The one coming in from Travelers Rest, the one coming in
Okay.
from the Red Bridge.
That's the one I missed.
We'll call it the
Good.
Green Diamond one, and then the Squish. Yeah. Yeah.
That would be nice,
Yeah.
pretty well throughout the whole.
Well, the thought behind it was that if we're gonna do it, we need to equally do it to all the main entrances to the city, not just
No,
pick.
I was just missing.
Yeah.
And the brand would need to remain fairly consistent.
Consistent,
The
yeah.
theme would have to remain consistent, and we also have buying power when you're buying 4 of the same sign. You get a better price, and if you do them all in the same calendar year, we essentially do as well. Again, we're not signage experts, but Mitch did an awful lot of research into this, called an awful lot of communities. You know, narrowing down what the sign looks like was essentially the hardest part in every community we called. But I think at the end of the day, if we want to stay with our theme to kind of mimic the City Hall brand and sort of that institutional university kind of feel, that's kind of where we arrived at this piece. But we're open to feedback and for further discussion.
And I did see the sign in Medicine Hat when I was out there, and it was one of the nicest parts of Medicine Hat, so there you go.
So you did get a price back on this Welcome to Summerside kind of archway.
So-
Yep.
Yeah, the total price is there of everything. And each one is priced individually on this.
I really like that. I like that.
And I guess
idea,
that's
though.
what are you guys?
Yeah, and it's expensive, yeah.
So that gateway arch, where would that go?
We're suggesting it to be in the downtown. Again, haven't talked to downtown yet. Just our committee felt as though it would be a nice feature. Typically when you see them in downtowns, you know, whether it's in Golden, Colorado or Rochester, they're typically in the core of the downtown or at the entrance to a downtown.
Charlottetown would have one in Victoria Row.
Right, exactly. Now, it doesn't have to be, but that would be where I would recommend proceeding with.
It sure is a nice building piece, don't you find? Like, so can we go back to those figures again?
The dollar figures?
Yeah,
Yep.
so the total project, that's for all of the signs at the different entryways?
Yes.
And the gateway arch
Yep.
is included? And are you thinking in terms of like phased over 1 year budget to?
We can, right now, it's currently as a placeholder in our community services budget to do the whole project in 1 year. But we can certainly phase it. We can do 2 entrances 1 year and 2 the next. We can do the archway in another. You know,
One
the
calendar
only thing I
year
would
saves.
suggest, the 1 calendar year does save on when you're ordering those 4 at once. How much, I don't know. We'd have to, you know, when they're outfitting themselves to build 1, it's just as easy for them to throw 4 together. But I don't know the price difference. But I can certainly find that out in advance of the budget process.
And I guess the only reason why I was wondering, Director JP, is just my thoughts on it when you show it that way. Thank you. It looks really great, the information and the visuals. My
Mitch did
thoughts
it
would
also.
be, if we were going to do it, the visual impact, like the best bang for the dollar would be like all of that at once to build on. Like I think it's the same thing as the downtown. When people started to see things happening, there was a really a kind of an excitement, and something like that really positions Summerside in a very nice way. That people coming in, there's nothing really to really.
And I didn't really rehash a lot of the reasoning that the committee went through because it was over a number of meetings. But the goal obviously is to have a welcome feature at every entrance to welcome people to our community. Right now, there's nothing. You don't know whether you're still in Sherbrooke or whether you're in Summerside, and something that feels consistent, that feels professional, and makes the community feel vibrant. And that was our goal. But then when you get to that point, it's then okay. Then what's the next step? And it can be infinite. In our first discussion and our first look at the budget, we were closer to $1 million. You know, and obviously we had to kind of pare back our expectations on where we could be from a budget standpoint. And I'm quite pleased at kind of where we've arrived. I mean, 117,000 is a lot, but I think at the end of the day, the impact is quite grand. And yeah. So from a move forward standpoint, I think staff will be looking for direction either, you know, to take this as it is to the budget discussions, or be seeking direction to, you know, either trim the expenses or look at the phased approach or those types of things. Or be sent back to do more research or new designs or.
Councillor McDougall?
I have no problem taking the project to the budget process. What I'd like to see is the welcome, the gateway arch, sort of separate, so that may have to be the second year or something like that, if we have to go phased, just so that we know where we're standing
Sure.
in the budget process.
Well, it's pretty easy to deduct 55,000 from the total
Yeah.
and and, you know, move forward with
Yeah.
the other options and then look at the Gateway Arch, or we can do the Gateway Arch this year and the other signage the
Whatever,
next, or
yeah,
however.
just so that we have numbers, but,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm
And
good.
we as a staff realize we need to tighten the designs and kind of get some input and so on and so forth, but at some point in time, we had to get a presentation to council, so.
Yeah. Is there any other questions, concerns? They're looking for direction, so are we okay with them moving forward? Any issues? Yeah, so I guess from our standpoint, JP, bring it forward to our budget consultations and we'll go from
And,
there.
and any of the research that you're wondering that we did do and how we arrived at it, it is in the report that we provided that you have on your desks there. So prior to the budget process, if you want to take a few minutes and you know, read through it, it'll be helpful to kind of understand how we arrived at where we did, so.
On behalf of council, JP, Mitch, thanks a lot for your work on this, okay?
Thanks.
That is the end of our community services agenda. Call the meeting to a close, Carrie? Good? Yeah, seconder, we're done.
I think we might be putting fire before tech services just because the chief is here and a couple of members here.
All right, fire, you wanna go?
And Aaron has to stay anyway, right?
The mayor, I'd sooner him be here for fire. Councillor Duran, I thank you for that, but I was hoping the mayor would be here for the fire presentation. So is that okay if we go ahead with tech services and then? I was
okay with
hoping he
me,
would be
yeah.
here, but I know he's at a wake and that's important, but he should be back shortly. And so if that's okay with you,
Absolutely,
Councillor Duran.
yeah.
Thank you, thank you.
Sorry, chief, you got to stick around a little longer. So there's just one item on the tech services agenda, and it's an update on the CS11 properties, the dangerous, hazardous, and unsightly premises properties. And Director Aaron is here to provide a bit of an update on those. I did have some notes that I wanted to kind of go over, but I might wait until you speak, Director Aaron, just in case you cover anything that's in there, and I'll leave them out. So I'll turn it over to you.
Alrighty, thank you very much. I guess there's 4 properties that we've been dealing with for the last number of months. I think there's some information might have been circulated around, but I'll just give you the quick update. We'll start with 99 Duke. 99 Duke was the house that we were dealing with for a couple of years, and long story short, the house was demolished down to the foundation. With the latest revision we came up with last year was to accommodate these small lots and houses that were on the existing lots. If the property owner wanted to rebuild the house at a later date, they could have the property surveyed to locate the exact corners of the existing house so that it could be future built in the exact location. That was done in this case. It took a while to get the survey and stuff. We still haven't got a copy of the survey, but the owner of the property came in and showed us on the phone where they received it from their surveyor had done the work. So we're saying, okay, we know you have it now. You can proceed with the demolition, which is just the removal of the remaining foundations that they could still build in the future on the existing location. So as of we're still reaching out to the owner as of today, saying your permit is here to come in and proceed with the removal of the foundation, and at a future date themselves or a future owner could rebuild on that property on the location of the existing foundation. So hopefully that's number one, we can get a property rebuilt on a small lot, a unique lot, and still have a new property built in that location at a future date.
Just for curiosity's sake, because I know I'll be asked, is
Yeah.
there timelines attached to them?
We did provide him, but we haven't. We basically gave him a month from when he comes in to pick it up to do it.
Okay.
That's going to come down to the availability of whether there's going to be frost that the demo contractor is going to be able to come in and do. I know that when we're trying it, the main demo guy is a farmer, so he should be available to do it, but we haven't been speaking to him. But
Okay.
but that's who we thought was going to be doing it. But yeah,
Thanks.
we're proposing to say, here's your permit, 30 days to get it completed. But
All right, like, yep, thanks.
it's a little bit. I know it's going to be. It's January, everything's cold and freezing, but we had to start somewhere. Right?
Yep.
So that's the update on 99 Duke. The next one, very close to that, is 422 Palmer. It was the result of a fire 6 months or so ago. It was, again, a long process dealing with the owner, the insurance, their lawyer. That finally got settled on their end as far as what was going to be covered, what the insurance. We didn't get into the details of that. We just understood that was the rationale, our reasoning for the delay. The property, once that got finalized, the owner was at least able to know what amount of money they were going to be able to have and what they could do with it. So they did come in and meet with staff a few times then to say they looked at their options. Since it's going to be a major rebuild, could they do something different or remodel? I think they're just going to rebuild what was there. They're in the process since then. So he did come in and meet, and a permit was issued, and they started immediately then doing the cleanup of the exterior, stripping it down. Like they're basically down to the studs. They've had 2 or 3 people in there working, I'll say consistently or regularly to try and rebuild the entire house. So that's the update on Palmer. So it's an active permit in place, and workers are on site doing it.
What process, or do we have a process in place to make sure that work continues to move forward, like that there's progress, that we don't get work for 3 weeks and then no work for a year and then we're back? Like, is there any, when we go into these CS11s and we start issuing warnings, is there anything, what's the follow-up process? Where do we, I guess that's the question.
I think we knew we had numerous delays that were beyond our involvement. At least now we can go by and see that activity is still happening. And then all we can say is we did go by and there's 2 or 3 people actively working there.
No,
So I don't know if we have anything in place now to say if something drags on, the permit's good for. Well, they've actually started, so.
No, I've had feedback from
Yeah.
neighbors and others saying, you know what, things are looking up, like things are moving along.
Yeah.
But I guess just on
I
this
can't
one or
say
anyone
for sure
else, I
whether
just
we have
curious as
anything I have to review it to see. I don't think we have anything that says once you start, you have this much time frame in this case, but.
So in theory, we could continue to go round and around the circle. Not necessarily this one, but
I guess we'd have to come back to you and say, look, here's the status that's been going on, what's really been happening. But I mean, just for anyone to order windows is gonna take weeks and months to do that.
no, I
right?
understand. I'm just
Yeah.
wondering,
Yeah.
follow up and how we make sure
Yeah.
that things continue to move forward. Thanks.
Yeah. So again, that's a positive. The property's being refurbished and not demolished, and salvage what is there and rebuild. The next property is 357 Elm Street. Again, it's a similar timeline as the most previous one on Palmer. Again, it was a fire, similar time frame. Again, dealing with, in this case, multiple property owners on the inability to make connections, chasing. We did finally get in contact and have one of the property owners reach out to us. They have been very cooperative in trying to. There was a lot of trees down. There was a fence. The property wasn't boarded up. There was a building that was. So they have been doing a lot to the what they could do on the exterior of the building and the property. It's drastically improved from what it was from say a week or 2 afterwards. We were still not getting anywheres. They engaged legal services to assist with that's what we were told, so we were put in contact with their legal representation to verify that it was the process, and they are still in a legal situation with their insurer trying to get finalized exactly the settlement or claim of what's being covered, so it's difficult to move forward when you don't know what's being covered and to what degree. So the unfortunate one with that was that it's still ongoing, although the property is still, I'll say, boarded up and as tight as it can be for a fire damaged property. So that's the update on that one, if there's any.
Yeah, I just have a question on that, and I think that was kind of the same report we got the last time we discussed this. It doesn't look like anything has changed there, Aaron. And I think one of the concerns that the neighbors had was that there was a lot of broken glass on the patio and around that area, that they were scared their kids were going to, and I think one of the requests is that maybe they would get that cleaned up and kind of make it a little more safe. And so I guess if we could ask them to do that, Aaron, at least. And then I guess I'd like to know the timeline on that as well. Like, how long do we wait for lawyers, and especially when there's so many owners, and like to make decisions, and you know, people are asking me and I don't know what to tell them, so.
And I guess maybe it might be from staff not being inside the building, but a lot can be done with, as far as refurbishing a building, when you have the foundation, the perimeter structure, roof, there is a hole in the roof, but as far as the majority of the area, you're not in a situation where you're dealing with a building that's 80% loss and it's left there with a shell, and you're saying, okay, it's going to have to come down regardless who does it.
Right.
In that case, we'd probably be saying, okay, look, it's going to have to come down anyhow. Bring it forward for a recommendation. Do you want to spend the money and then try and leave the property? This is not going to be the case. This is going to be more than likely going to be a rebuild. So they're not just, you're into a larger value. You go in there and say, we're going to go in there and take it down because it looks unsightly.
Yeah, for sure.
But you're not going to also go in there and say, okay, we're going to go in there and, sorry, you're not going to, we wouldn't recommend you go in there and fix it up and invest that money to fix it up either. So it's a harder one if the situation had been a little different and it was burnt worse and was going to be a tear down, but just wasn't tore down. We'd probably be saying, look, go in there and tear it down, leave the property, because it's got to come down anyhow.
So there's no going in and saying, because we're waiting on whatever the lawyers have to say or the insurance has to say, so we're just kind of at a standstill. There's nothing we can do?
I say there's things you can do. It's just going to be a tougher recommendation to say go in there. The recommendation would be go in there and fix it, or go in there and tear it down, and you're into a lot higher dollar value because there's still a lot of value in the building.
Right.
If it was someone's, that they're going to be saying, look, I lost that value, and to try and, that we'd be into a different discussion if it was a lot less salvageable.
Is it worth another conversation with the folks, like in the near
touch
future?
base with on I'll say a semi-regular basis to try and get an update from the lawyers. Seeing as how they've hired legal representation, we've tried to say, give us an update when you can to say what the status is. So that's before we weren't having any luck with of the 3 property owners. So now we feel we have an access to their legal team to say, getting an update that we feel is reliable and current.
Okay. Thanks, Aaron. Thank you.
I haven't been by it in a while, but the current state outside,
Yeah.
Councillor Ramsey just mentioned the glass, that sort of, but like, is it cleaned up?
Yes,
Like, is it,
before
to
the
look at, is it?
It's boarded up.
But
it's
before the fence
looks-
was half down, there was 5 or 6 or 8 trees
Yeah.
laying down. There was 2 buildings out back. One was open. One's been removed. The fence is gone. All the trees are gone. The buildings even boarded up part of the roof to stop
Yeah.
the water from coming in to further damage it.
Yeah, so in that case, let's just hypothetical, if that stuff hadn't been done, and we were talking with them, we could possibly go ahead, do the cleanup, and then lien the property for that. Not tear it down necessarily, but do whatever work we thought, okay.
And at least to secure the property for sure.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Really? Yeah, great. Okay. Good to know, and I'm sure the neighbors notice that, and then they stay off of me because they're interested in it just doesn't look very good on that corner, so that's the concern. Thanks so much.
Yeah. And the fourth one is 149 Pope Road. Again, it was a similar situation. For the very short recap, was fire, delay in getting settlement, finalization on what was being covered, what wasn't going to be covered. Got a finalization for a settlement. Came in with some plans of what they had intended to do for renovation and repair of the damaged portion of the building. The work had started within a day or two. Other agencies were advised of the situation, and a stop work order happened. While that stop work order issue was being, I'll say, remediated or rectified or issues that were identified, their contractor that was on hold went on to other jobs. Then they had to, as part of their part, they had to sectionalize off the building to, I'll say, to compartmentalize the bay area or working area from the rest of the building. He had the materials that we witnessed ourselves. Our staff were there a few times. The materials were there and could not find contractors to build the petitions to section it off. We tried advising them with local bidders or contractors. He was able to get some of those to come in after hours beyond their regular work commitments, whatever jobs they're on. They completed the, I'll say, the partition wall between to sectionalize off and make their work area or bay area secure, and install the new doors and any windows that are in that area, and reestablish the heating system. Our understanding that work has been completed, but the remaining work for the rest of the building hasn't, I don't believe he has, I can't say started, we haven't noticed that it's been started, and that time frame has expired from the original time period to have all the work completed whenever he got his permit. I'll have to go back through the literature, but I think it was the end of December that was to be completed. But our understanding is that he hasn't been able to get the contractor that he had at the time to come back because he went on to do other work. And we know from dealing with him to trying to get contractors to even do the petitions, he was having difficulty getting people just to get contractors to do that limited around our scope of work. So we're back here at the end of the expiration of his time frame that was given to complete the work.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor McDougall?
Yeah, so where do we go from here? It's regardless whether they did anything inside, it's a disgrace to drive by it, the roof, you know, especially the old part. And those residents, people commented on it the other day. You know, they live up McDougall Drive, they come down that McDougall Drive to turn onto Pope, and that's what they're looking at. And it seems like it's just going on and on and on. And I know that the city is trying to do everything they can, but something's got to give here. It's a disgrace.
Yeah. And that's why, I guess, as far as we've been having chats, or staff have been in chats with Gord and others to say, okay, now get into the actual wording of your bylaw and see what next steps or measures you can recommend or reasonably do, and make you aware of what they are and what the options are.
And, okay, just I guess speaking of the wording of bylaws, I understand that this is a industrial property and it's in an industrial zone, and I think we all get that. And I understand that it was there before many of the houses that were there, and I get that as well, but and I think the residents get that. Those are all facts. I think the issue here is we have a bylaw in place to deal with these exact situations, and the description, and just because you brought up the wording of bylaws, the description of that bylaw word for word is a bylaw concerning property standards whereby no building shall be or become an unsightly property or otherwise hazardous, dangerous, or a fire hazard. Within that bylaw, it clearly defines a dangerous or hazardous building. It's in section 4.1D, part 4, as A, become dangerous to life, safety, or the health and welfare of the occupants or the general public. B, deteriorated so as to substantially depreciate the value of the property in the vicinity, which I think it's doing. Or C, become detriment to the general appearance of the city. It's certainly doing that too. It defines litter. It goes on to say that litter is considered rubbish, refuse, garbage, waste materials, papers, packages, containers, bottles, cans or parts thereof, and any article, product, machinery, or other manufactured goods which are dumped, discarded, abandoned, or otherwise disposed of, which the yard is full of. It goes on to define unsightly property as any property or part thereof upon which there is litter or any dangerous or hazardous building. And just as a bit of a side point, the property down the street from them, Superior Sanitation, same type of operation, one of the nicest properties in the city, considering what it is and what they deal with there. I don't mean to ramble on, but just some things that I kind of gathered up to prepare. Section 7.1C, the same bylaw states that any property that cannot reasonably be repaired or that has been ordered repaired but repairs have not been completed by the deadline set out in the notice may be ordered demolished. I'm not saying we should go in and tear the place down, of course. But that fire happened almost a year ago to the day, January 31st. The roof is still gone. The bay doors are still burned. The walls are still missing where we cut through them with saws. So I won't get into the specific, penalties and fines that the bylaw outlines, but I guess the fact of the matter is that our bylaw says 6 months. It's been 12. The place looks, at least on the outside, the same as it did before. There are, other properties, I guess, that have been this way for almost the same amount of time, and people are just as passionate about those. But I guess we went over those. But that bylaw, I think, was signed into, it was adopted August, just 4 months before we all sat in this room for the first time. So it's not like it's an outdated bylaw. So I don't know, where do we go from here? Can we go anywhere from here? And I don't want to spend, millions of dollars either, but is there anything we can do?
I think we need to get an understanding what our legal options are from Gordon, and what the pros and cons of each of those options are, and then make a decision and move forward. I think we're all getting a little frustrated, and our appetite to get this thing done is
Yeah.
at a point.
It's just word for word, that property just,
I think
the bylaw describes it to a T.
So there are some options there, Gordon.
Yeah. So I had circulated some information to the council members, I think it was last week. And as Council Drouin points out, the bylaw does have remedies in there for council to deal with these type of properties. Oftentimes the remedy doesn't happen as quickly as anyone would want, but you have the option to pass a resolution to have the building demolished, and have staff coordinate that. The cost of that would then be billed back to the property owner, who, if they didn't pay, would form a municipal lien onto the property, and our opportunity to collect that would be when the owner sold the property. Our bylaw kind of pretty clearly outlines your authority to do that. That being said, there still is potential for litigation around that, and there's potential for litigation around that. I'll just leave it at that. The bylaw allows most of our bylaws very similar. If somebody's violating the bylaw, we can attempt to prosecute the owner of the property through the court system, and go to court and prove that they're in violation of the bylaw, and then the court orders fines as per whatever the fine structure is as laid out in the bylaw. Under that option, and we have gone down that road before with property owners who have been violating the bylaws. It doesn't happen that often that we get that far, but we have. Or you continue to work with the property owner and hope it gets done. Similar to one of the previous properties that we were just talking about, another option is for council to order that, council to pass a resolution to give staff direction to have the repairs done ourselves, right? And that becomes complicated for potentially many of the same reasons, potentially, that the owner's not having the repairs done in a timely manner. If we take it at face value that one of the reasons is availability of workers. Those are the main options, maybe I guess the only options under the bylaw that we have to try to deal with the property like this, so.
Is there any way we can go back further and give the responsibilities of people that own the property and sold them to the, like, if I got the same problem with the old vacation school, it's been sitting there for 15 years.
No,
And it's,
yeah.
and the reason for that is the government sells it to whoever the heck's gonna take it off their hands and leaves us with a mess. So
So
can
there's
they be
nothing
made
in-
responsible?
There's nothing in our bylaw that gives us any remedy against any previous owner, no.
Gordon and Aaron, have we met with the owner, or is the owner just sending somebody in? Has the owner, have we as a city actually went to him and said, we have a problem, Houston? And we need to
Yeah, Aaron will
have this addressed?
That's for Aaron and Rob.
I haven't met with the gentleman, but one of our staff has been up to his site, has spoken to him numerous times on the phone to try and,
Yeah.
I don't know if it has happened recently to say what the progress has been as of late, but I know they did reach out to them whenever he called and was upset with the stop work order, and we went through, no, it was not our stop work order. Because we'd been working with him to get him his permit, and he goes, I just got my permit, now you're giving me a stop work order. I was like, well, we didn't do that. Like, we did assist the agency to go up there and say, this is the scope of work that we've got a permit to do, and advise them this is what their plans are. We have spoken with the gentleman, the owner, not the on-site people, again, to try and assist them to say, here's some potential local people that you may be able to find that he may not know if he doesn't live in this area. So we have been having staff, I have not, but other staff have met directly and had phone conversations with the owner. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have them again to say, come in at a level and say, this is where it's at, what's the latest update on where you're at. We did actually hear, whether it was secondhand from the contractor as well, to say that, yes, I was to go to that job, because there's not that many that are still around Summerside. You run into them other job sites, that yes, I was going to that job site. I can't wait 30 to 40 days before I just went and took another job. Like, so that was information that we were able to verify ourselves as well.
Right. Personally, I think it's time that our CAO and Gordon meet with the owner and lay out the options that's before council. And we're at a point where we got to do something, because this has been going on way too long, and every day seems to be another day. And so I would suggest that the city CAO and our city lawyer meet with the owner and outline the options that we have. I don't know, just a thought. So.
And write this down. I agree with Councillor McDougall. But actually, oh, stop it. Anyway, I guess the way I'm listening to all of the comments going back and forth, but we do have the bylaw. I think mayor and council and senior management have tried really hard, to work through this situation so that it's a bit of a win-win for everybody. But I'm thinking of people that are reading or hearing this in the media, or the neighbors, they're talking about it. Like, I think we're sending a message also that when the city says something, the city means business. And I mean, we can be fair to people. We can try to, meet them halfway if they're trying. I don't think we want to be heavy-handed, but also there are, 99% of the people that really do try, and then something like this happens. It's sending a message that we just keep over and over, looking the other way in hopes that it's going to work together. And I know the staff have really tried to, work through this, but maybe it comes to the point where we do have to send that very solid message and make some decision on it.
I think both your, I guess, Councilman Dougal and yourselves, both comment is probably accurate and the next logical step to take, But I can tell you personally, I've tried to get the outside work done for contractors, never got prices from all four of them, and that started 6 months ago. I have a furnace going, and for 3 months I've been chasing two guys to give me prices, and one second guy hasn't even came to the house. That's my own personal experience. My mother's doing stuff in another county. chasing 3 contractors trying to get people, and you can't get people to come and look at it, let alone price it, let alone come and do it. Like, that's just where we're at talking to contractors. I'm not saying that's the whole reason here, but I know personally that's what's happening as far as people that are doing jobs in town. They do it faster if they could have more people.
Yeah, and I realize that.
And I
but
think
The next logical step
Yeah.
is probably what you're suggesting, to sit down and
Yeah.
hear it face to face and say,
Right.
council, this has gone on, and we need to get further confirmation of what your timeline is,
Yeah.
and here's the options that we're
But
prepared
I
to do.
think you mentioned the last meeting we had, Aaron, that what you're gonna get with it all fixed up is what it was before, and it wasn't any floral gardens before.
Yeah, their plan is to take the I think that's what it was take the area that's I'll call it the low roof. If you look at the aerial photography, it was no roof. They did put a new roof on it. Yes, now it's heat singed, but it's still a tight metal roof. The higher part that's got the hole in it plans to come off and make that area all the same level as the low roof, you know? That was what the overall plan was. It's still gonna be, in the end, a brown building recycling business on location, but
I,
Is there anything we can do? So the fenced in area, it's all fenced in there. Is there something we can do to sort of, to the fence? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you go into other municipalities, you'll see fencing where they have, you know, the green mesh on it. You have something to sort of take your eye away from the ugly, burnt out brown building.
yeah. Everything, our fence now that he has there is probably 6-8 feet high, and as soon as you add the individual strips down to
Yeah.
it, you add to the wind load, and the fence is going to bend over. We've had our own fences
No,
do
I
the
know
same
what you're
thing.
saying. I
right?
just
Like-
like to.
and when it's only 6 feet high, it's not taking away from a 30-foot high roof that's got a hole in it. You know, like
No, I totally hear you, but
Yeah.
we're working really hard to try to beautify
yeah,
an ugly old pig. Like, it's not gonna.
Yep.
I just don't see it happening. So I don't know where we go.
Just build a wall
I
and make
guess-
them pay for it, is that what you're saying?
I don't know. I just
Heard that before somewhere.
I know what the expectation is, sort of at the end of the day. I think that would be good to be clear as council. What are we eventually
Well-
going to be happy with? Because if he fixes the roof and there's still the brown building there that's not very sightly, then are we still not very, like, we're putting a lot of effort into cleaning up, which we totally should, 100%, no doubt. But what's acceptable to us at the end of the day, and what's the reality that's going to be there at the end of the day is very
Yeah.
important.
and I
What's
guess,
acceptable and what's the cutoff?
Yeah.
like, that's the point I think I raised the last time we met, is you can bring it back to what it was before, but it's still at a level that I just don't think is acceptable in the city, and I think we should get aggressive and deal with it in some way, shape, or form. And you know, irregardless of the fire and irregardless of the repairs, I think we would have had every right to move forward with a non-sightly premises approach anyway. So for me, I think option one is the only option, and I think staff should meet and express that to them, that council is prepared to move forward with option one. You know, there's the building, and then there's the you know, garbage truck graveyard there. We profess to be an environmentally friendly city, and we have, you know, this, God knows what's pouring out of that stuff. And you see these trucks on the road spewing out transmission fluid all over the streets and everything else. And it's just unacceptable. And if these people are the least bit civic minded, you know, they wouldn't be doing the things they're doing. And you know, I think we've pussyfoot around this thing long enough, and it's time that we get aggressive and do something.
Agreed.
And I agree with Brian. And I also know there's a number of buildings right in our downtown area that we should talk about. There's a number of buildings. I just wanted to put that out there.
Welcome, your worship. Welcome.
Late, but I had to go to a wake. A friend of mine and a longtime businessman in Summerside, Wayne Poirier, passed away, and we pass on condolences to his family. So, but it was large, large crowd and still ongoing. Continue on, sir.
Well, we were just coming to the end of it and wanted to say hello.
Right.
Um,
Hello.
But I will go on to say that I agree with Councillor McDougall and you know, everyone else that spoke, and insofar as something needs to be, we say it at the end of every one of these updates, something needs to be done now, but you know, we gotta stop talking and start doing. Because at the end of the day, that line that it's kind of in my head now, you know, it's all about surrounding property values and deterring from the general appearance of the city. That property is one of, certainly, sure there's probably a few, like Councillor Ramsey said, that are doing that, and it's in our own bylaw that it's stated there. So I just hope soon that we can come to the next step and work towards the end of this. So I guess if that's everything, or if
So we're just given a directive, right?
So as we understand it, that council wants senior staff to meet with the owner, outline the options and possible next steps if that owner does not comply.
Right.
So what we can do is we can have that meeting, and we'll certainly bring back an update to council as soon as we can.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, thanks. And it's great to hear about those other three. It sounds like things are coming along. It's great. So with that, I guess we'll close out tech services and move on to fire services. Thanks, everybody.
Did we do community services?
So, doing fire services, thank you and good evening, Your Worship. Welcome.
Thank you.
Fellow councillors, Fire Chief Ron Inman, city staff, and members of the public. As you know, it's budget time, and it's time to do something about our fire hall. This has been a topic of concern for many years. There's no need for another study, as there was a lengthy one completed in 2014. It was called the functional analysis. It's time to look at this building and make some needed changes, needed decisions to make it, to meet the standards required. I don't know what happened there. It was you, Bruce. Okay. This 59-year-old fire hall has seen its day. On December 9th, the mayor and city council had an opportunity to tour this building, and to say it is in great need of some serious consideration is putting it mildly. I will begin by speaking of the destruction that was caused by Storm Dorian. It managed to take the roof off of this building, this being the second time that it has occurred. It also happened last winter. So twice in 1 year, the roof was torn off. I'm sure you can imagine the damage that was caused both inside and out of this facility. Going back even further than when my term in council began, it was noted that in 2014, the roof leaking both water and ice had caused a lot of damage to the ceiling, the floor of the second story. The basement is in bad condition as well and has some serious water issues. As you know, this is a concern for the growth of mold. The main floor simply does not have enough room for vehicles and manpower that is required for this department to run effectively. I have concerns for our firefighters who need this building to do their job both efficiently and safely. When these firefighters come into the building after fighting a fire, they do not have showers to use to decontaminate. These 57 men and women who are our first responders, volunteers, should have the proper facilities to do their best work. There is provincial legislation in place for certain situations to be rectified, and we would like our Summerside Fire Hall to be on target. I am proposing that we put a committee together to review this situation and make recommendations on how we move forward. I will now ask Chief Ron Inman if he would like to say a few words, and then I'll open the floor to council members and mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Barb. Not a whole lot I can say other than everything that you spoke about. We did have our tour the other day, and I think we made some points on some areas that we need to address. My passion is keeping our members safe, and I do have a decontamination protocol in place. We just don't have the facilities to implement that. We also have 3 women on our department now, and it's a 59-year-old building that just doesn't cut it anymore. We've been talking about this in my years over here. I've got 25 in the fire service and 20 over across the street. I would say the last 15 we've been talking about renovations and, you know, a new hall and a lot of different things, but I just think it's time. I agree with putting a committee together and making some decisions to keep my members safe. That's my passion. I guess that's all I have.
Thank you, Chief Inman. So now I'm just going to open the floor to Mayor and Council if anybody has any questions or concerns around what we'd like to do. And Mayor Stewart, go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor. I agree with everything you said and what the chief said. And I've been around here a couple of weeks myself and saw that that building served us well for many years. But having been through the building for the first time in the basement there just a few weeks ago, it's in bad shape. It needs an upgrade, it needs to be renovated, or it needs to be replaced, or something. We have great equipment, I think, and we have a great group of volunteer firefighters. And they're very dedicated. They've got to be one of the most dedicated organizations and groups, you know, because I guess you have to meet a high standard to attend your training sessions, and if you're not a member. So very dedicated and serve our community well. It's the only building left in the city that needs renovations. I think we're doing the armories. We did this building a number of years ago. It had its day, and there was discussion, should it be demolished, it should, whatever. Council made the decision to keep the building and renovate it and add to it, and picked up a couple of properties next door and made parking space. I think the council made the right decision. It'll be here for 100 years or more, and hopefully. And a number of years ago, when I did work in the police department, they built a new police station. It got outdated in about 20 years. So, and that had to be modernized. That was done, and we're renovating, I believe it was approved in the last meeting or two, the municipal services building. And that has to be done as well. And the armory building, which was built in 1911, I think, according to the design, it's old and needs work. But our fire department, it needs work, as well as the one in St. Eleanor's too. I'd like to see us, we keep both of them, and that one upgraded and painted and whatever work it needs, get that done at the same time. I agree, Councillor Ramsey, with the committee, and I think the fire committee and the chief and his executive could serve on the committee, and you know, we can do more studies and more reports, but that just costs money. And we know what we need. We need a new modern fire building that the firefighters can be proud of. And you had mentioned a couple of things, like no washrooms downstairs or no showers, and there's a bad water problem in the basement, the holes in the basement for the water to run in, I believe, and to run out.
And not a good idea to go home and decontaminate.
But having said that, our department, they do a great job for the equipment that they have and for the building that they have to work with as well. There's beautiful old antique equipment there that's a shame that it's sort of shoved in one corner and covered up with blankets or whatever, because there's no room for it. And I was in Yarmouth a few months ago and saw their fire museum, and that could be part of it, you know, some more space. And as time goes on, you know, the trucks now are a lot bigger now than they were when that place was built 60 years ago. So we need more space, and I think we've got to make sure we think outside the box and build something that will last for another 50 or 75 years, not something to get us through for a year or 2 or 10, because then we'll be doing the same thing. And I think if we really think outside the box, and you go online and look at some fire halls around the country and around the world, there's some very innovative people that thought of those, and I believe there's one that your department sent over, Chief, in British Columbia, where they have 6 or 7 apartment buildings on the top of the fire hall, right downtown, and we're meeting 2 goals there. We're keeping it downtown, we're getting more people to live downtown, and some of them got coffee shops up above them to gift shops, to you name it. And I think if we tied in something with this building with a bit of a museum, there's other orders of government that they can tap into for programs, like the museum and the historic society and you name it. So I think when we start the process through the committee, looking at a fire hall, we've got to think more of just this brick building with 2 red doors. We've got to really think outside the box, and I think the provincial government and the federal government would come on side if we had the flagship of Atlantic Canada for a fire hall. When I say come on side, I think with funding. And so like our credit union place, we're all very proud of that. You're not going to get anything any better east of Montreal. And that's why we can get so many events here and functions. And who would want to go back to the other system? It worked great. I mean, couldn't you imagine if our swimming pool was still in the basement of the Holland College building, and the bowling alleys at the last one in the other building that were like a potato field? That had to be changed. And so we got a great setup there. And the council, and I commend the council of the day, and it may have been 2 councils, but it took quite a while to get the package tied together and to get it approved and get it there. And to my knowledge, Mr. Finance, no, Mr. CEO now, I think that our credit union place will be paid for within 8 years or so. And I could be out a year or 2 on that. So, but if you had to do it now, we couldn't do it. But I think the time has come that we have to do something with the fire hall, and I look forward to sitting on that committee as an ex officio member, Chair Barb, and so I'll cut it off there. I think everybody's got my thoughts on having a newer, modern, decent facility for our firefighters. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart, and I look forward to having you on the committee. I don't know if it was, there's 3 of you, so okay. How about Councillor Snow?
That sounds good. I'll keep this fairly brief. I totally agree with everything that has been said to this point. I guess the only comment I'd like to add would be that, you know, there's been lots of talk about this for a lot of years. I don't want to be part of talk. I called this firefighter my hero the other night. Councillor Brown made fun of me a little bit, but I do mean that. I honestly can't imagine these guys and women doing this stuff. So just saying thank you and you guys are awesome, that stuff doesn't cut it. We need to actually make sure there's actions to follow that. And I think we've done a really disservice, for whatever reason, over a number of years to our firefighters. And I think we need to change that going forward. We owe it to them because they do so much for the city. So just leave it at that. We need to find a way to move this forward and not find excuses why it can't go forward. So,
thank you, Councillor Snow, and I agree with you. The talking's done. It's time for action. And Councillor McDougall.
Thank you. I guess I'll shock everybody here. No, I won't. As far as the study you mentioned, I never agreed with that study when it was done, and I'm glad that we're not doing another study. So, but one thing that I do agree on is that we need to set up a committee, because regardless whether I'm in favor of a reno or a new, something has to be done. And I think we have to set up this committee to explore all options. If it's a reno, it has to be a serious reno. If it's new, we got a lot of thinking to do and a lot of digging, because we need to be very innovative if we're going to think that we're going to build new and we're going to get any kind of financial assistance. We need to be thinking outside the box. I'm not saying that it can't be done, and I would volunteer to go on that committee to help see us to get to a resolve of our fire department, because we do have one of the best fire departments around on the province, in the Maritimes, whatever. And we're very fortunate. We forget about this. It's a volunteer fire department. And so I fully support setting up a committee and would volunteer to go on the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McDougall. And being on the committee or not being on the committee, we are certainly going to be open to any ideas and suggestions that anyone has, you know, to send them forward. And that includes the community. If anybody has any ideas when we form this committee, please send them forward to us so we can make the best decision, because that's the bottom line. Thanks, Bruce. Councillor, no, I didn't say that. Deputy, you know, okay, Norma. Okay. Councillor Gregg. No,
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to be on that tour we had the other day. My biggest concern is there enough room in that area?
There's not.
For, like, space is a large problem over there. I don't know if there's enough room there to just start patching the old place up and stuff like that. I don't think that it could be done in that area anyway.
That's the information that the committee could flush out.
Thank you, Councillor Gregg. And I guess one of the other things I wanted to say, we have needs and we have wants, and I guess I just need to make it clear, in my opinion, that this is a great need. And with that, I'll just pass it on to Deputy McColman.
I think everybody has made some, you know, really important comments. I remember I was the chair of police services when they were looking at the renovations. And what really impressed me about that, certainly there was times of talking about it, but when it came time for action, they really pulled together. And I think, as Chief Edmund, as you have pointed out, at that time, there were women constables coming on, and they recognized that there was a need, that they had to modernize and make it a lot more functional. And also, I don't think we're the council that gives lip service. And I think this gives us a chance to really do something, to put action in our words when we say that we do appreciate all of the work that all of the firefighters do and what they give to the community. As volunteers, that's a big dedication of time and commitment and training. Another thing that I look at too, and Councillor Gregg and I were on with other members of the senior management team, the asset infrastructure management, when they had those training sessions. And one of the very strong points that they mentioned is that as a municipality, regardless of the size, we have to be very, very strong and diligent in taking care of all of those assets that we have, our buildings. And again, as Mayor Basil has pointed out, mostly a lot of the work has been done on some of our stronger assets that identify Summerside as being a historic downtown, a historic community, and things that we're very proud of. And the opportunity exists where we can do something that is really innovative. And so certainly I am very much behind seeing this happen, and being in the ward that it's in, I would be very interested in being on the committee as well.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And I have to agree when you're talking about there being, it's just a different time. We have men and we have women as firefighters, and we have one shower over there in a very open room with no door and no whatever. So yeah, it's time for change, that's for sure. Thank you. Justin.
Yeah, just to, I guess, repeat a comment that has been made about just thinking outside the box. I think, like I've been looking into, just out of for pure personal interest, just some different fire halls and some of the things that they house in other cities and provinces other than just the fire service. Like there was one that had, I think, like a women's shelter on the top floor, and how awesome would that be? Something like that in Summerside where it's needed up in this area, something like that. And I just think the more outside the box and the more innovative we can be, the more attractive it is to those levels of government and the different departments within those levels of government. And it's almost exciting to think about what could be possible.
Thank you, Councillor Duran. Councillor McFeely?
I would certainly agree with the development of the committee. I guess I would encourage the committee to develop a terms of reference, and been involved in moving forward several major building projects, and there's logical steps to get to where you need to get to. So terms of reference defines the deliverables, with a work plan and a reporting mechanism back to council, so that we sort of have an understanding of the thing is continuing to move forward. And the more innovative it can be, the better. And I keep on hearing about fire halls not qualifying for funding, but when I do a search, I was doing a search here a minute ago, and I'm reading about all these fire halls that are getting federal and provincial funding.
There we go.
All over the country.
Okay.
And then I keep on hearing around here that fire halls don't qualify for funding. So I think there's a big piece of work to do around exploring potential funding for it, because I think that's been a big part of the challenge, is that that the other two levels of government haven't been at the table. So I would encourage the committee to formalize itself a little bit and have a regular reporting, understand things are progressing. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McFeely. And that would be the whole idea for the committee, is to keep reporting back to, to council to make sure that we're all on the same page and we're moving forward. And thank you for that, Brian. And it's nice to hear you did that Google search there to find out that we can get some more money. I'll tell you, I'll do that when I get home tonight too. And are you, Mayor Basil? Sure.
Madam Chair, just one final comment, and I thank everybody for their comments, but and Councillor McFeely there with the funding, which is, I think I agree with you 100%. If we play our cards right and present the right package, that we could tap into some funding. But and to go on a little further with Councillor Duran, we don't have any museum in Summerside. And this, besides the firefighting equipment, we have the old equipment. Some of it's been there for, about 150 years. Some of that, but there's a lot on the island that probably could be displayed. But just a museum in general, if that was a wing of it, sort of thing. There's no museum on the island, I don't think, and there's an opportunity here to tap into that part of it too, and to draw people and to display our beautiful old history and antiques and you name it. Not only the fire department, but we've got a lot of military history here, the fox industry, you name it. Sports, maybe we've got Sports Hall of Fame. We saved it from going to another city by putting it where it is, and it's not enough space, but we made it do for the time being in order to keep it here in Summerside. Maybe that could be a wing of it. So all these things will come out during the committee discussion.
That's right.
Just
Thank you, Mayor Stewart and Corey.
We all did the tour of the facility, which was good. Yeah, a great tour. It might not hurt to ask our member of parliament to come in and take him for a tour, so he understands the reasoning behind the ask. Just recently, unfortunately, Tyne Valley had a major fire, and like all good fire departments, we sent guys up, Wellington sent guys up, so we're not just a fire department for Summerside. We
Right.
service a larger area. A lot of that area is his constituents, so it wouldn't hurt to give him a little walkthrough, and I'm sure it'd look pretty good on his resume if he was to find some funding.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Corey. And I think that, and any member of the community, I'm sure if they got a hold of Chief Ron and they wanted to go in and see the building, if anybody's curious out there, it's not a pretty sight, but I'm sure you could go see it. And yeah, Councillor Deputy
Just
Mayor.
an afterthought when everybody was talking too. I know that the city is really trying to recruit doctors and medical people. And a lot of times we've heard it said that when they're coming, they're looking at schools, they're looking at facilities, they're looking at all kinds of things that have an impact on whether they want to move here with their families and whatnot. And I know that the Summerside Fire Department, you folks do an awful lot of, like during Fire Prevention Week with the students and things like that. So there's a whole lot of an untapped or a hidden piece of the puzzle that, you know, having a really state-of-the-art fire department facility, that's something that's going to speak volumes, because if we don't take care of the facilities that we have, what kind of a message is that sending to, you know, people that we're trying to recruit to really give us that medical support that, you know, we're really wanting? So they all kind of work together.
They all kind of work together. Thank you, Deputy. Going on. So I guess that concludes the fire department conversation, except that I know Summerside, and I'd like to commend them on their help to Tyne Valley and the arena burning, and you guys reaching out and doing your part, Chief Enman. So another thing I'd like to say is that I reached out to Turk and Pam Gallant, and they told me they would send, and it's on its way. Pam called me yesterday. There's a signed jersey coming from Turk and Pam, and as soon as it arrives, I'm going to start to, hopefully everybody wants to sell tickets on it, and for this jersey, and hopefully that'll happen within the next 2 weeks, and the money raised will go towards the arena in Tyne Valley. So I just wanted to thank Turk and Pam Gallant for that contribution. Thank you.
Down the road, and maybe you mention it.
And yes, we do. I was contacted also by Chad Matthews. Chad is our Stompin' Tom guy, and he was really hoping to put together, it looks like our timeline isn't going to work. We were hoping to put this together by the 23rd of January, and that doesn't look like it's going to take work. But Chad and the Ellis Family Band and oh my goodness, Eddie Quinn and the Fiddler's Sons and Keelan Wedge, and they were all prepared to do a nice concert down at the Credit Union Place on the 23rd. But anyway, the timeline isn't working, but that's something that we're going to look at for the spring. That again is a fundraiser for the Tyne Valley Rink, and I know council would be excited to be part of that. And anyway, I wanted to thank every one of them for offering to do that, and hopefully we can make it happen in the spring. Thank you. Thank you.
Just on another side note, since we're into the Tyne Valley fire, from a community services standpoint, Summerside Minor Hockey and all the other minor hockey associations from West Prince have really stepped up to find ice time, offer gear, offer anything they could to sort of help. I know the president very well for the Tyne Valley Minor Hockey, and we were chatting. He was just so amazed. By that Sunday, like a couple days after the fire, he had all his teams rescheduled, everywhere going. All the young skills hockey players are now in Summerside, joined our skills program for the rest of the year at no charge. Like just stuff where people really stepped up. I really look forward to hopefully that benefit concert coming together, because of the acts alone and our great facility of being able to, you know, showcase that to all of West Prince, because I think people would really get behind something like that, rightfully so. They're in a tough spot, and we know how important credit union place is to the city of Summerside, so Time Valley Rink is equally important to them. That's sort of their bread and butter, so I'm just want to point
Hoping
out
that
the
it'll-
work of all the other surrounding communities and our local minor hockey.
I did speak with the
Thank
mayor
you,
the
Cody.
day of the fire, the day after, and I had a long chat with him, a fine gentleman, Mayor Noy,
Mayor Noy, yeah.
Valley, and I said, when the time comes, things to get organized, we'll be there to assist, and our minor hockey association will work with theirs and our community services, so he appreciated the call, and we look forward to all working together to
That's
solve
right.
that.
And it's,
Mhm.
yeah, it's all working out great.
Councillor Duran?
Yeah, just wanted to go back to just something about fire services before I forget. We had our monthly association meeting last night, and I know near the end, you kind of, Chief, mentioned some things that you kind of wanted to do, or could do, or prepared to do immediately. Is that maybe something for budget time, or is that something that you wanted to kind of put by us tonight? Like,
What we were talking about was making some cubicles for sleeping, like the guys are sleeping on the floor.
It's bad.
So I think it's doable out of the budget that I have now, but I guess talk with Rob, and we'll probably talk tomorrow at our directors meeting and see whether it's
Yeah.
viable to go ahead with that. Or
And I know you were talking about lockers, and if we did do something like lockers, we could always move them to a new building or a renovated building or whatever. Like, there's things that if we do put in place right away, because these folks need a hand over there, that there are things that we could, to move to a new, yeah, okay.
And I know, just from a, I don't know if it's a budget perspective or a labor perspective, I know there's lots of guys over there with some skills that are more than willing to help out where they can. I don't have many, but I can do what I'm told.
we can teach it.
Maybe we could use your skills and the other great.
Play guitar.
The whole group here will have to do a number. I know Bruce has a CD out, and we've got lots of singers and step dancers.
We could
in there.
entertain them.
So
Right.
you would be able,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, it was Time Valley Rink where I got my break. It was just my elbow, but it was, it was a break.
Okay, well, if that's it, folks, thank you very much for, all your comments on this problem that we have over there, and you're all part of the solution, so thank you very much. And that's the end of our fire
That's the end of
committee
the committee
meeting.
meetings?
The end of the agenda, period.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I believe that there's an
Thank
item
you,
for the
Rob.
committee of the whole under section 119 of the Act. So we'll take a 10-minute adjournment here first.